Okay, watcher, welcome back. Right, now this Harley Davidson's hit the garage this last week and it's time to do the first modification. A lot of you have been saying can't wait to see what you do with it, so I can see there's a little bit of anticipation. So what we're going to do is try to show you something interesting today. You can, contrary to what I've said to the people who've asked in the past, actually you can take the silencers out of these, you can make them straight through. There's a little bit of surgery involved. You have to get your cutter out, and when you've done that, there's a little bit of making good involved, a bit of care and consideration, and you have to return a baffle. So I've got a great cheap option for you to turn your standard factory mufflers into a nice sounding exhaust for less than £50–60, and that's a real breath of fresh air, don't you think, Pam?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get stuck in. Welcome back to Delboy's garage. Right, just cleaning this up. This was up in the loft. Now this is the silencer, or one of the silencers, from Penny's old iron. Penny's old iron. Penny old iron. And I had it up in the loft for ages. When we got rid of her bike, we didn't give these to the new owner. We just chucked them up in the loft. He was happy with the aftermarket pipes that were on it. But this is one of your standard mufflers. This is what's on your iron or your Sportster of any kind. And indeed the Dyna and your Fat Boy and just about everything else. That weighs about 6 kilos. It really is heavy. It's got solid lumps of steel on it. It's got a cat converter in it, which is extremely heavy. I'm going to show you how to cut that out. But before we do that, I'll actually show you what the cat looks like. Have a look in here, Pen. That's the contents. Let's go in there. There it is.
That's it, got it.
Isn't it? There it is. That's the, see that honeycomb down inside there? That's the cat converter, which lives inside. Now, actually, in physical terms, it's about that long, and it lives in the front half of your silencer. Then it's got a long tube further behind that, and there's wadding around it, and then the whole lot is welded in there. That's the back end. So you can see by looking down, if you can see down in there, it gets to about here and it stops dead. You can't even punch it through. If you try and punch these through, I've seen people try with long drills, masonry drills that go right through a house, the big long 14-inch ones. Yeah, you get a hole through it, it doesn't do anything, it just sounds disgraceful, awful. There is a method. What you have to do, because that's welded on the back, you normally get a hole cutter, you know, like a hole saw, put it in there, hole cut, and it comes out. And on the early silencers that don't have the cats in, that's how you get the contents out. You put the hole cutter in the end, you drill down into that, and you literally withdraw the contents, and then it's an empty tube, and then you deal with what we're going to do after this, when I've got this off. But this doesn't work like that, because the cat converter that lives in the front is bigger than that. So if we cut that out, you won't get the contents out, because you get to the point where probably here and it stops. So you actually have to come up this taper, you have to cut up this taper 2 3/4 inches at least, in order to make a hole big enough to get the contents of here out. So the first job, I'm going to take the, come down here, just don't need the heat shield on it. First job is just to get it out of the way, because we're working on the pipes, and all these are Jubilee clipped on, the big glorious Jubilee clip. If you want to do this to your actual silencers that are on your bike, then it's an even cheaper option. And if you're confident, and you take your time, you can do it even cheaper. And then if you screw one up, I have seen one for sale in the past where people have been selling one. It's like £20–30. That's just a heat shield, all right? Not needed, and certainly afterwards. So under the bench for a bit of scrap steel, and that's what remains. Just a nice solid silencer. And the first job is to mark off with the masking tape. We need to come up here 2 3/4 inches and mark it off. Okay, preparation and all that. First thing, once you've got that taped over for marking purposes, standard ruler with a little hooky hook, and we're going to measure 2 3/4 inches all the way around, do a dot to dot, and then join it up and give us a cut line. And if you look at your silencer, all Harley silencers have got this little dimple here where it comes in at the end. Don't know why that is. So obviously don't measure from there because that's going to dimple in where you're finished. So we'll start there, and it's you see that pen? On your tape measure, 2 3/4 inches. There it is. Nice accurate mark, and all I'm going to do is put one every 6 or 7 mil, and then do a dot to dot at the end.
You're clever.
Dot to dot. I used to do them when I was a kid. See, they're ever so easy. Nice picture of a horse running. There we are. Right. Now the more care you take to get that exact, the better. Where this dimple is, I just sort of went round it with the ruler and made an exact straight line. Otherwise your cut line would come in. So there we are, 2 3/4 inches up, and that's going to give you there, that taper, or the inside diameter of that tube when we cut there, is going to be enough, hopefully, to get all the contents of this out in one go. So we're going to cut that first. Let's get the disc. Before I do it, in behind here, right behind here, is wadding. And wadding has a habit of grabbing hold of the grinder and throwing it into the next garage. So be very careful when you cut through. You're just looking to go through the sheet metal. If you have a Dremel tool, it's the same thing. You go through the sheet steel on the outside, and it's only thin, probably 2 mil thick. No thicker than that. Once you've gone through, move round. You don't cut through this. You need the back end connected to get it out, and that's the care and caution considerations. So be careful, guard yourself, make sure you don't hurt yourself, and just go through the outside. That wadding inside will grab the wheel, and anybody who's done an abrasive wheels course will have seen the videos that come with it and the injuries that can ensue that they show you in those videos. So be very careful when you're grinding through there that the wadding doesn't catch the disc. I'll show you how to do it. Right, as you can see, that just grabs hold of the grinder, and we'll lift it out of your custody and take it somewhere else if you're not careful. Right, now this is the fun bit. We'll do this in the garden. Let's get a big hammer. Seriously folks, fiberglass, okay? Atomised fiberglass will come out of that, so breathing equipment, this ain't for your eyes, because it's nasty. What I'm trying to do first is trying to hold this fiberglass wrapping in, because we want to preserve it for the new job, which I'll show you in a minute. So try and hold that, press that in, and it won't get dragged and torn all over the place, and obviously they won't atomise it too much either. So should you take your mask off in the middle of the job? Here we go.
You need a donut.
Did you say I need a donut, or I am a donut? You are a donut. Let's have a cup of tea. Right, as you can see, the wadding itself is useful. Keep it to one side, you don't need it yet. That's what you end up getting left with. Just an empty tube, nothing in it at all. Now you cannot run the bike on that. It will run horribly. You'll lose all your back pressure and your mid-range torque. You'll use more fuel, and it will sound horrible. You get a horrible echoing bubble sound. It's just not nice at all. You can't do it. I've seen a few people do it in desperation that they want to do something. That's not the way. That's the guts that comes out. That weighs about 3 times what that tube does, and that's bigger. That is so full of stuff. There's the cat there. You see that? Kind of all battered in, beaten in by the chisel. And that there is full of that, I think it's titanium in there, isn't it? Palladium.
Palladium.
Made of palladium, aren't they? That's a semi-precious metal in there, but you can't do much with it, so don't worry about it. You can't see through them, and that is so much steel there. And that is literally scrap. You can do nothing whatsoever with that, nothing at all. So that'll go, not just under the bench, that'll go at the tip. Now what we've got to do is make that end good. Obviously these are not stainless steel, they're chrome, so there's a little bit of a trick, which I always do. Right, now just going to finesse that edge, get it as round or as flat as I can, so that it's nice, because you can mark as much as you like, you can cut as carefully as you like, you'll never get it perfect. So take a bit of time on the flat disc and get that rounded off. Right, that is about as square as I think you'll get it. I mean, obviously if you've got access to things like a bandsaw, you can crack on, because it'll look great. And then finally, there we are, just a little bit of paper to finesse it, and be careful not to scratch that outside, because once you've scratched that, it will be quite hard to polish it. But if you do, you've got a buffer, you can polish it. It's going to come on the inside edge. Just make that nice, smooth, so that the end of it's like a coin, like the edge of a coin, because you're going to get yourself cut on it. Walk into it with your ankle, you know what it's like. It's also an MOT issue. If the end of your exhaust is sharp, blah 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 blah, you know. Here we are. On eBay, I bought some of these. Now these are the baffles that go inside Vance & Hines slip-ons. And if you can see, where's the light again? Down inside, they get this twist.
Like a whirl,
Hang on.
swirly.
See it on there. Hang on, hold still. There it is.
Yeah, you can see it.
It's like a swirling thing going on. Like a rifling. Now that principle, you can see it actually on the outside, the way it twists. Now that rifling effect and the fact that gases are allowed to vent into the wadding takes away the echoing, which I hate. I can't stand an exhaust that echoes and is hollow sounding. It doesn't sound very nice at all. This gives that beautiful, deep, thick, thumping, heavy Vance & Hines sound, and that's what it's responsible for. And you can buy these on the internet, on eBay, Craigslist, Gumtree, wherever is your local site, and you can buy them for, I think we paid about £20 for these. They're so cheap. You just buy them and you find them. They're a bit rusty, but it doesn't matter, they're going to get even rustier, and that will fit inside. Now, done some research on it, and I found that this, well, should I say, done some development and looking into it when I did the other one, because I've already done the other one. And this pipe here, again, if you can see down inside, it kind of appears, hang on, let me use the light. Where are we? Can you see it down there? Probably can't.
Not really.
Get a reflection. Right, okay, don't work, that one. That tube there is welded inside this cone, and a little bit of that tube sticks in. There's about an inch or so of this tube protruding inside there. So when you look down in there, there's a little thing poking out. And conveniently enough, pure convenience, that goes over it. So the end that's got the thread in goes obviously at the back for bolting it in. That goes in side like that, and if you feel down for it, it wedges over the top of the pipe at the front, like that. So all we have to do is fix that in there permanently with some wadding around it. Ever so easy, isn't it?
I can't get it out.
Got it stuck. Right, there we go. Now all I'm going to do is that wedges down over the top. The ID of that is the same as the OD of that, so it pushes over the top, and that little bit of rust just gives you that kind of interference fit, which is great. And all we need to do therefore is make a method of bolting it in the back and then wrap some wadding around it, and that's the next stage. Now what I'm going to do, the silencer bolts onto the bike like that. The bolts are at about, if you look from the front of the bike, the bolts are at about 5 o'clock. That makes sense? Kind of there. So therefore, normally silencers bolt in, so that's the way it's opposed to the bike. Silencers normally bolt in from underneath. You put the bolt under there to bolt your little baffle in. I don't like that because you can still see it. I like them on the inside. If they put the mount points on the inside where you can't see them, why not put the baffle bolt on the inside? So for the purposes of lining it up, I'm just going to pop some tape in line with that. Simples, like there. And I'm going to put, this is for the, again, purposes of preserving the finish, even though it's the inside. And one more on the top, just for drillage. Then get my Greek mate Stanley, and just cut that off, because we need to measure, and we need that sharp edge in a minute. Okay, method of finding. Now when I've pushed that in there, I've wedged it over the end of that pipe, I need to be able to measure where that hole opposes itself, so I know to drill in the correct place, so that this sits right in the middle, not pulled to one side, and obviously I don't miss it and come off too far off the end. And the simplest method is pop it in, put in the hole on the side, on the baffle, roughly where you want it to go. Hold it, push it down in, roughly there. Feel it go over the top. Give it a little bit of, that's it, 2 or 3 mil down on top of that. Don't need to be any more. Literally, it only needs to go over it by, you know, that much, and it'll hold, it'll stay there. And then, right in there, can't see a thing. That's better. Can y'all see too?
Yeah, I see what you're doing.
Then into the middle. There it is. Right. Wedge that on there, notch the pencil. This is real redneck way to do it. Come on out with the notch kind of reminded, and then put the notch back on the outside. Come on in.
That's very MacGyver-ish.
And it touches. That's it.
Amazing.
That's where it is. That's not amazing. it's a redneck way to do it, isn't it? I love redneck solutions. Right, that's your hole. That underneath there, that is where that hole is. So we'll just whip it out. So when we put that in, that's where that hole is, we hope. Right, next thing, it's going to pop a centre punch in the top and poke one tap on there. Okay, one hole drilled. Now that should line up, so we're just going to check it first. Wish me luck then. This is on camera. You see the light? Crap light, isn't it?
Can't really
There it is. Oh, there it is. Got it. A little tiny bit,
yes,
just a little bit
can
out.
see it.
Just come that way a bit. Here it is. Perfect. So take that out. First thing is to wrap that up in wadding. So we go back to the wadding that this came with, utilising what we have. And what we're going to do is kind of make the best of it. Right, wrapping that up, leaving that part of it free, coming from the front. And the idea is to wrap over the vented section. There's not much point in wrapping over this, doesn't do anything at all, you're wasting it. So just come in there. If you want to protect yourself with some gloves and stuff, you can. That's just common sense, I guess. Wrap that up there. And it was a bit, you can see from the hammering out process, this got a bit beaten up, but it's okay. We can make it work. Just picking that up from there, I think. making sure we leave that hole completely free and cover all the other section. Right, don't think we need that bit, not important. Now from here, this is where this will seem a bit back to front. Masking tape, brilliant stuff. You can, I've seen people use wire, you can use MIG wire, lock wire, anything you like to put your wadding in place. It really doesn't make any difference because it will still come out eventually. All wadding eats itself out in the end. So I use masking tape. It burns off. It will, it'll burn, it'll snap, whatever. But once the baffle is in place inside the tube and held in, it won't go anywhere. All wadding eventually works its way out, and then I've done it in the past on other videos. You just use a bit of loft insulation or whatever. But what I'm doing is taping this in place so that it's small enough to get through that hole, which is the biggest concern, because I want to pack it as much as I can. Right, all done. So that's it, wrapped up. Loads of tape all around it. It doesn't matter how much tape you put around it because it will burn off and fracture anyway. But you have to get it to the size by compressing that wadding in so that it goes in all right. And just feed it in to the pipe and the top. Try not to rip it. I mean, it's going to rip. It's going to snap anyway as time goes on, as the heat gets to it. Just oppose the two holes roughly in line. And there we go. Get that in the end. And there we are. Just get that. There it is. Clicked on the end. So that's now clicked on this end nicely. The next thing is obviously, if I just knot that in there like that. If I just screw that in, that's about how much, that's about where I want the silencer. But it's not held very still because obviously there's this issue. So I need to deal with that gap. Can you see it there?
Mm-hmm, yep.
That gap is an issue. So the simplest way with that, I'm going to make a little spacer. In my case, out of a stack of washers. I haven't got any tubing the right size. You cut a little piece of tubing. And it's quite difficult, I would imagine, to get that stack of washers and put them all in there one by one and drop them all, and it just end up a right mess. So what you do, take a piece of masking tape, like that. Put them on a bolt first to hold them in line. And then wrap it around them so they're all in one piece. Bit of common sense, isn't it, eh? Up here for thinking. There you go, old granddad trick. You need to make a spacer, just use washers and then just carve that off with your Stanley knife afterwards. And you've got a nice easy way of being able to handle all the washers in one stack, nice and easy lined up. Right, them like that, inside, so they appear. Bolt through them, then kind of 3 fingers now, get the baffle, and it all screws together, there it goes. And that will then go in nice. Now, if you really want to, if you're really worried about it, hang on, set myself, right. Okay, you see that in there? Mm-hmm. What I'm going to do in a minute, I'll find a nut and I'll put a nut on top of that as well, and that will absolutely hold that in. And there it is. Nothing moves. Nice and solid, no rattles. If there is a bit of a rattle on it or anything, you just deal with it by padding it or packing it out, whatever. Loads of ways to do it, but that's it. So what I've done there, I've made a Vance & Hines slip on straight through. If I go like that, you can see, you'll see that?
Yep.
Straight through, nothing in there. But what you do have is that swirl. That swirling does give you the back pressure you need. It gives you a dead, thicker, softer sound, not quite such an echoey, hollow popping that you get that sounds awful. I hear it on some of the big tour glides and stuff. They just run empty pipes. Not my favourite sound. I do like something a bit beefier, a bit more solid, and hopefully that's going to work. So I'm not going to put the heat shields back on. I'm just not really interested, don't need them. They're nice enough as they are. I'll get cleaned up, get greasy handprints off at the end. So let's get them on the bike. These are the spare set, as I said. The ones on the bike are immaculate. I'm going to just take those off, swap these straight on. They're a straight part swap. But before we do that, we'll run it with them on so you can have a listen to it, and then run it with these on and see the difference. All right, they're going to sound great, don't you?
Yeah, I reckon.
Let's stick them on the bike. There we are. Preserve these at all costs because they are quite pricey. These are a little collar, like a little tiny gasket that goes in that part of your pipe. You know? And it goes in there to stop the gas leak, so preserve that, don't lose them. Little screwdriver in it. Just come in the side, they're a bit flexible, they're kind of made out of wire wool. There you go. They're kind of filled with pencil lead by the look of it, but there they are. So just keep that safe. Take the other one off. Right, when you, just as a quick kind of word to the wise, if you're going to fit your silencers or take them off, make sure that you undo the exhaust, undo the header pipes. These two bolts on the flange on the top, they must be backed off. If you're going to manipulate your exhaust in any way, it's vitally important that you undo the two nuts. Just back them off so that it's all flopping around. If you don't do that, then manipulating and moving the pipes around while they're bolted solidly against the head can snap those two studs off. It's very important. You snap one of those off, do we need to say any more? So back those right off, back all the heat shield screws right off. There's a nut there that holds this one, so back that off so everything can move. Don't forget these little kind of wire carbon ring gaskets in there, put those in. Do all the fasteners up. Now when you do the exhaust up, do it up from the front back. So you do the front two at the top, let the exhaust move around, let it find its own place. Do those up first so they're nice and done up, then come back down and do up the centre one, then put up this clamp nut, then do the silencer up so that you do it up from the front back and it all finds its own level, and you'll find when you put the last bolt in, it'll go in nicely, mind you.
I'll bang my head.
Just bang your head on the door, mind it. That's it. And then when you've done, as with all exhaust work, give the whole thing a wipe off to get your greasy mitts off before you start it up. There we go. Right, we're ready. That's
Oh gosh, I'm nervous now.
Oh no, just have a listen.
Let's
That
go.
sound rubbish. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Not that hard, is
Not
it?
that hard, isn't it? How hard can it be? Take it easy, ride safe. See you next time.